My name is Maxwell Wright, 34 years old, and I never thought my own blood would try to bleed me dry. That family dinner 6 months ago started with hugs, but ended with accusations, all because my sister discovered I had $12 million. 1 minute we were sharing appetizers, the next she was screaming that I stole it, demanding I make things right. They never expected I was recording everything. When it was all over, someone was crying, but it sure as hell wasn't me. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama gets your blood pumping too. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Portland where lawns were small but well kept and cars were practical, not flashy. We weren't poor, but we definitely weren't rich either. My dad Thomas worked in sales for a small tech company, while my mom Linda managed a local clothing store. We lived comfortably enough until I turned 12. That was when everything fell apart. I still remember the shouting matches that would erupt late at night when they thought my sister Bridget and I were asleep. The divorce wasn't pretty. Dad moved out suddenly one weekend while Bridget and I were at our grandparents'. We came home to find Mom crying at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of her. "Your father left us with nothing," she said, though I later learned that wasn't entirely true. The child support came regularly, but it was never enough according to Mom. Bridget was always Mom's favorite. 2 years younger than me, she had this ability to cry on command that worked wonders on our mother. While I was told to man up, when facing problems, Bridget was coddled and protected. When money got tight, I was the one expected to get a part-time job at 16. Bridget, meanwhile, got a new phone because she needed it for school. After the divorce, Dad became increasingly absent. He remarried a woman named Carla who had 3 kids of her own. Suddenly, his attention was divided among 5 children instead of 2, and Bridget and I fell to the bottom of the priority list. Our weekend visits became monthly, then quarterly, then just holiday appearances. Mom never missed an opportunity to remind us how Dad had abandoned us. "He's got his new family now," she would say bitterly. "We have to take care of ourselves." What she really meant was that I had to take care of things. By 17, I was working 30 hours a week at a local grocery store while maintaining honor roll grades. I applied for every scholarship I could find and managed to get enough financial aid to attend state university. Meanwhile, Bridget partied through high school and barely graduated. Mom still praised her for doing her best. College was a struggle of endless ramen noodles, late-night study sessions, and weekend shifts at a campus coffee shop. While other students were enjoying the college experience, I was calculating how many hours I needed to work to afford next semester's textbooks. I lived in the cheapest apartment I could find, sharing a 2-bedroom place with 3 other guys to keep costs down. Through it all, I developed a passion for computer science and cybersecurity. Something about creating secure systems fascinated me. Maybe it was the control it gave me that I never had in my personal life. Whatever the reason, I excelled in my classes and graduated with honors. After college, I took a risk that horrified my mother. Instead of accepting a stable job offer from an established company, I decided to launch my own startup with 2 friends from my program. We had an idea for security software that could protect small businesses from increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. "You're throwing away a perfectly good future," Mom said when I told her. "Just like your father, always chasing dreams instead of being responsible." Those first years were brutal. We worked out of Jake's garage, surviving on investor pitches and small development contracts. I slept on friends' couches when I couldn't make rent. I ate so much ramen that I still can't look at those packets without feeling slightly nauseous. Bridget, meanwhile, dropped out of community college and moved back home with Mom, who never seemed to mind supporting her. 3 years into our startup journey, we had a breakthrough. Our security software caught the attention of a major tech company after we helped a client of theirs recover from a particularly nasty breach. They were impressed with our solution's elegance and effectiveness. What followed was 6 months of intense negotiations, late nights refining our product, and anxiety-filled meetings with lawyers and executives. Then it happened. The offer came in. $12 million for our company. After taxes and splitting with my partners, I walked away with exactly $12,700,000. Suddenly, I was wealthy. Not billionaire wealthy, but wealthy enough to never worry about rent or ramen again. The thing is, I didn't change my lifestyle. I stayed in my modest apartment. I kept driving my 10-year-old Honda. I invested most of the money on my financial advisor's recommendation. The only luxury I allowed myself was never checking price tags at grocery stores anymore. I made this decision deliberately because I knew my family's history with money. Mom had a gambling problem she thought no one knew about. Several times during my college years, she called asking for money to cover the utilities that I later discovered went straight to casino ATMs. Bridget had maxed out 3 credit cards by age 23, buying designer clothes and taking lavish vacations she couldn't afford. Every time I had tried to help them financially in the past, it ended badly. I paid off one of Bridget's credit cards as a graduation gift, only to have her max it out again within 2 months. I covered Mom's rent for 3 months during a period of unemployment, only to discover she had turned down 2 job offers because they weren't at her level. So I kept my newfound wealth to myself. I told them the company had been acquired, and I had a good job with the new parent company. I never mentioned the millions sitting in my accounts. For 3 years, I maintained minimal contact, focusing on building my life and managing my unexpected wealth responsibly. Then 2 weeks ago, Bridget called out of the blue. Her voice was warm, enthusiastic even. She wanted to reconnect. "It's been too long, Max," she said. "We should be closer. We're family after all." She mentioned a dinner at Mom's house, a chance for everyone to catch up. Mom's renovated the place. "You won't recognize it," she added. I was cautious but hopeful. Maybe time had changed things. Maybe we could heal old wounds and build the kind of family relationship I'd always wanted. My girlfriend Jamie encouraged reconciliation, but warned me to be careful. "You have a big heart, Maxwell," she said as I was getting ready for the dinner. "Just remember that not everyone deserves a piece of it." I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and headed to my mother's house with cautious optimism, blissfully unaware that I was driving straight into an ambush. I pulled up to my mother's house and immediately noticed the changes. The shabby ranch-style home of my childhood had undergone a significant facelift. New siding, landscaped front yard, and what looked like a recently paved driveway. Mom's teacher pension and part-time retail job certainly couldn't cover renovations like these. I wondered briefly where the money had come from but pushed the thought aside. Maybe she had finally become more financially responsible. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, looking more put together than I'd seen her in years. Designer glasses, freshly colored hair, and what looked like an expensive blouse. "Maxwell, my boy," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that felt slightly rehearsed. Her perfume was overwhelming, something expensive and new. Come in, come in. Everyone's so excited to see you." The interior renovations were even more extensive than the exterior suggested. New hardwood floors, updated kitchen with granite countertops, and furniture that definitely hadn't come from the discount stores she used to shop at. Again, I wondered about the source of funding, but kept my questions to myself. This was supposed to be about reconnecting, not interrogating. Bridget emerged from the kitchen, looking polished in a way that screamed trying too hard. She embraced me tightly, whispering, "I've missed you, big brother," in a tone that felt more performative than genuine. She pulled back and gestured to a tall, slick-looking man in an expensive suit. "This is Derek, my husband. We got married last spring. Small ceremony, otherwise we would have invited you." The pointed comment about my absence wasn't subtle. Derek's handshake was firm to the point of discomfort. "Finally meeting the elusive brother," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bridget talks about you all the time." He looked me up and down, clearly assessing my worth based on my casual attire and unbranded watch. "So tech industry, huh? Developer or management side?" "A bit of both," I answered vaguely, already feeling the conversational probe. "The startup world keeps you wearing multiple hats." "Startups," he nodded knowingly. "High risk, high reward. Any big exits in your portfolio?" His finance bro terminology made it clear he was fishing for information about my financial status. Before I could deflect again, Mom introduced me to her boyfriend Gary, a balding man with a perpetual salesman's smile. "Gary's in investment management," she emphasized, as if making sure I understood his value. "Always looking for promising opportunities," Gary added, handing me a business card within minutes of meeting me. "If you've got any savings looking for growth, we should talk." The only genuinely warm greeting came from my younger cousin Zach, Linda's sister's son, who was visiting from Seattle. At 25, he had the eager, slightly lost look of someone still trying to find his path. His handshake was genuine, his smile reaching his eyes. "Man, it's been forever," he said without accusation. "Last time I saw you was what, Uncle Thomas's remarriage. You were headed to college." "Yeah, time flies," I replied, grateful for the lack of underlying agenda in his conversation. Mom ushered everyone to the dining room, where an elaborate spread awaited. Far more food than 6 people could eat, presented on serving dishes I'd never seen before. Clearly, this dinner was meant to impress. As we settled around the table, the conversation immediately took a turn toward financial matters. Subtle at first, then increasingly direct. "We've been looking at houses in Lakewood," Bridget mentioned casually, referring to an upscale neighborhood. "Our dream home came on the market, but you know how crazy prices are these days." She sighed dramatically. "Sometimes it feels like we'll never get ahead." Mom nodded sympathetically. "I understand completely. Retirement isn't what I thought it would be financially. Teacher pensions just don't go as far as they used to." She glanced at me. "Some months are really tight." Derek jumped in with details about mortgage rates and property taxes, while Gary offered unsolicited advice about making your money work for you. The entire conversation circled around financial struggles and aspirations, with frequent glances in my direction. My discomfort grew with each passing minute. This didn't feel like a family reconnection. It felt like a financial inquisition. I answered questions about my work vaguely, talking about the industry in general terms rather than my specific situation. "Excuse me," I said after deflecting another probing question from Derek about tech company valuations. "I need to take this call." I pulled out my phone, pretending to see an important notification, and stepped into the hallway. In the privacy of the hallway, I took a deep breath and considered my options. I could make an excuse and leave, or I could stick it out and hope the evening improved. Against my better judgment, I decided to stay. These were the only blood relatives I had, after all. Maybe I was overreacting. I headed to the bathroom to splash some water on my face and collect my thoughts. My phone buzzed with an actual work email, and I set it down on the sink counter to respond quickly. Halfway through typing, I realized I needed to dry my hands properly and stepped away from the sink to grab a towel. When I returned to the hallway, I nearly collided with Bridget, who was coming out of the adjacent guest bedroom looking flustered. "Oh," she exclaimed, startled. "I was just looking for a tissue." She smoothed her hair nervously. "Mom wants to know if you'd like coffee with dessert." "Sure," I replied, noticing how she avoided eye contact. As she hurried back to the dining room, I checked my phone and felt my stomach drop. The bank app notification settings showed it had been recently accessed. I hadn't opened my banking app in days. A cold realization washed over me. Bridget had gone through my phone while I was in the bathroom. The password was fingerprint protected, but I had recently enabled the feature that allowed access to certain apps without re-authentication if the phone had been unlocked within the last 5 minutes. I returned to the dining room to find the atmosphere subtly, but definitely changed. Bridget was whispering something to Derek, who nodded slightly with a calculating expression. Mom and Gary exchanged glances. Only Zach seemed unaware of the shift, happily helping himself to another serving of potatoes. For a moment, I considered grabbing my jacket and leaving immediately. But curiosity and a strange sense of inevitable confrontation kept me in my seat. If my privacy had been violated, I wanted to know exactly what they were planning. So I stayed, watching the facade of family warmth crumble before my eyes as dinner continued. I returned to the dining table, where conversation abruptly halted. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me, expressions ranging from calculated interest to barely concealed excitement. The air felt charged with anticipation, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "Everything okay with work?" Bridget asked with feigned concern, her eyes darting to Derek then back to me. "Just fine," I replied evenly, taking my seat. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." An awkward silence followed, broken only by the clink of silverware against plates. Then Bridget cleared her throat deliberately. "So Maxwell," she began, her tone sharper than before, "you've been pretty vague about this sudden success of yours. One day you're sleeping on couches, the next you're totally fine. Kind of a dramatic turnaround, isn't it?" I took a sip of water, buying time. "Tech can be like that. Ups and downs." Mom leaned forward, abandoning all pretense of casual conversation. "Are you hiding something from your family, Maxwell?" Because families shouldn't keep secrets from each other. The irony of this statement from a woman who had hidden her gambling problem for years wasn't lost on me. I tried changing the subject. "Zach, you mentioned you're thinking about going back to school. What programs are you considering?" But Bridget wasn't having it. She stood up, wine glass in hand, as if preparing to make a toast. The theatrical nature of the gesture confirmed my growing suspicion that this had been planned. "I think it's time we stop dancing around the subject," she announced, her voice carrying an accusatory edge that silenced the room. "Maxwell has been hiding something significant from all of us." She paused dramatically, looking around the table before focusing back on me. "My brother is sitting on millions of dollars while his family struggles." The statement hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Gary's eyebrows shot up. Mom gasped audibly. Derek smirked slightly. Zach looked confused. 12.7 million to be exact, Bridget continued, her voice rising. "All while Mom can barely afford her medication. All while I've been working 2 jobs to save for a house. All while Dad's old business ideas mysteriously turned into gold in your hands." That last accusation caught me completely off guard. "What are you talking about?" "Dad's ideas." "Don't play dumb," Bridget spat. That security software. Dad talked about similar concepts for years at his old company. You stole his intellectual property and made millions, and you didn't even have the decency to share with your own family. This was absurd. Our father had worked in sales, not product development. He'd never created any intellectual property related to cybersecurity. This was a complete fabrication, designed to create a claim on my money. Before I could defend myself, the floodgates opened. Mom burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. How could you, Maxwell? After everything I sacrificed for you. Living in near poverty while you hoarded millions. Near poverty, I echoed incredulously, gesturing around the expensively renovated dining room. Mom, you just remodeled your entire house. On credit, she wailed. Crushing debt because my own son wouldn't help his mother. Derek stood up, his banker persona dropping completely as he assumed an aggressive stance. Family takes care of family, he stated flatly. In my book, what you've done is nothing short of abandonment. I tried to explain the legitimate origin of my earnings, how my partners and I had built our security software from scratch over years of hard work. But my voice was drowned out by a chorus of accusations and entitlement. I raised you better than this, Mom interjected between theatrical sobs. To think my own son would become so selfish. Zach was the only one not immediately attacking me. His expression was confused, eyes darting between family members as if trying to piece together a puzzle with missing parts. The accusations quickly turned personal, striking at my character and integrity. Always thought you were better than us, Bridget sneered. Mr. Perfect with his straight A's and big ambitions. Turns out you're just a thief who betrayed his own blood. I saw your bank account, she continued, confirming my suspicion about my phone. $12.7 million just sitting there while your family struggles. Do you know what that makes you? A monster. The shock of the privacy violation left me momentarily speechless. My sister had deliberately gone through my phone, invaded my private financial information, and was now using it to orchestrate this ambush. You went through my phone, I finally managed, my voice quiet but intense. I had to, Bridget shot back without a hint of remorse. You've been lying to us for years. Someone had to uncover the truth. The conversation rapidly devolved into calculations of what they considered their share of my money. Derek actually pulled out a pen and began jotting figures on a napkin. If we divide it evenly among immediate family, he mused, as if I wasn't sitting right there, minus a reasonable portion for Maxwell, of course. I should get at least $3 million, Mom declared. Tears mysteriously dried up now that they were discussing specific amounts. For all those years of single parenting. Equal shares make the most sense, Bridget argued. $4 million each for me, Maxwell and Mom. The casual way they carved up my life's work, money I had earned through countless sleepless nights, stress-induced ulcers and years of sacrifice, felt like a physical blow. These people weren't interested in reconnecting with me. They had orchestrated this entire evening as a setup to expose and pressure me into giving them money. I stood up intending to leave, but Derek stepped between me and the doorway. Come on, man. We're just getting started on figuring this out. You can't walk away from family obligations. As I looked around at their faces, Mom's calculated distress, Bridget's entitled anger, Derek's barely concealed greed, Gary's opportunistic assessment, I realized with painful clarity that this wasn't family. This was a group of predators who happened to share my DNA. And for the first time, I saw clearly all the signs that this dinner had been planned as an ambush from the start. The strategic seating arrangement that put me furthest from the exit. The way conversation had been steered toward financial struggles. Even the timing of Bridget's coincidental appearance in the hallway when I left my phone. This wasn't a spontaneous discovery. This was a carefully orchestrated financial shakedown, disguised as a family reunion. The atmosphere in the dining room grew increasingly hostile as my refusal to immediately agree to their demands became clear. Mom shifted from tears to emotional manipulation, a tactic she had perfected during my childhood. "After all I sacrificed for you," she said, voice quivering perfectly. "Working 2 jobs when your father left us with nothing. Skipping meals so you could eat. Is this how you repay maternal devotion? By hoarding wealth while I struggled to afford my heart medication." I knew for a fact that Mom's teacher health insurance covered her prescriptions with minimal copays. This was just another fabrication designed to trigger guilt. Bridget paced around the table, her sense of entitlement palpable. "As your sister, I deserve an equal share," she insisted. "We grew up in the same household. We're equal in this family. Why should you have millions while I can barely make rent? It's not fair, Maxwell. It's just not fair." The irony of her complaint wasn't lost on me, considering she was wearing designer clothes and a watch that cost at least a few $1,000s. Derek had moved from calculating percentages on a napkin to more specific figures. "Look, just $1 million each is fair," he said, as if offering a reasonable compromise. "You keep the bulk of it. We're not being greedy here." Every time I attempted to refuse, the emotional manipulation escalated. Bridget's face contorted with rage. "If you don't make this right, I'm telling everyone how you stole Dad's ideas," she threatened. "I'll call Uncle Robert, Aunt Sarah, all the cousins. I'll post it on social media. Everyone will know what you did." Mom joined in with her own threats. "I'll tell everyone how you promised to support my retirement if your business succeeded. I have witnesses who will back me up. This was a complete fabrication. I had never made such a promise." Derek took a more calculating approach. "There could be legal implications here," he said with the confidence of someone who had watched too many legal dramas. "Family business rights, verbal contracts promised support. Courts take family obligations seriously." While they were distracted arguing among themselves about how much each deserved, I quietly excused myself to use the bathroom again. This time I had a purpose beyond escape. In the privacy of the bathroom, I activated the recording app on my phone, making sure it was set to continue recording even if the screen was locked. I slipped the phone into my shirt pocket, camera lens peeking out just enough to capture the scene I was returning to. As I re-entered the dining room, the demands and threats continued with increasing hostility. With the recorder running, I asked pointed questions. "So just to be clear, you're saying I should give each of you $1 million because we're family?" I asked. "At minimum," Derek replied without hesitation. "Considering the total amount, that's really quite reasonable." "And if I don't?" I prompted. "Then you're dead to us," Bridget snapped. "And we'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." The unity they displayed in attacking me revealed long-established family dynamics I had tried to ignore for years. Mom and Bridget had always aligned against me, presenting me as the villain in family conflicts regardless of circumstances. This was just a more extreme version of a pattern that had existed since childhood. I remembered previous incidents where they had expected handouts. When I got my first real job after college, Mom had immediately asked for loans that were never repaid. When I received a small bonus at work years ago, Bridget had somehow found out and called asking for help with her credit card debt again. As the recorder captured their increasingly hostile demands, Bridget revealed something that made my blood run cold. "I've already told Jessica and Mike about your hidden wealth," she said, referring to mutual childhood friends. "They were shocked at how you've been pretending to be just getting by while secretly being a millionaire." She had begun spreading her narrative before tonight. I realized this wasn't just about getting money from me. This was about controlling the story, painting me as the villain regardless of my response. Mom, perhaps sensing my continued resistance, decided to play another card. "I need to be honest about something, Maxwell," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "I'm in a lot of trouble financially. The renovations, they were a mistake. I'm over $200,000 in debt. The bank is threatening foreclosure." She looked at me pleadingly. "I could lose everything." This admission explained the home improvements, but did nothing to increase my sympathy. Once again, Mom had made irresponsible financial decisions and expected me to bail her out. The threats became increasingly explicit as the evening wore on. "Split it fairly or be cut off forever," Bridget declared. "Those are your options. Family or money. Choose." To my horror, Mom began calling relatives during dinner, putting them on speakerphone to spread the narrative of my hidden wealth and betrayal of family. I sat in stunned silence as she twisted the story to distant aunts and uncles, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. My anger built beneath a carefully maintained calm exterior, as the recording continued capturing every word. I was seeing my family's true colors with painful clarity, and there would be no going back from this revelation. The final straw came when Bridget made a claim so outrageous I almost laughed despite the tension. "Dad told me before he died that you stole his ideas," she said solemnly. "He was heartbroken that his own son would betray him like that." This was not only a lie, but an impossible one. Our father wasn't dead. He was very much alive, living in Arizona with his second wife. The absurdity of the claim showed just how far Bridget was willing to go in her fabrications. "Dad's not dead, Bridget," I said quietly. "I spoke to him last month on his birthday." She flushed red, caught in the obvious lie. "Well, he's dead to me after what he did to this family," she backpedaled. "And he did tell me about his ideas that you stole." "That part is true." It was time to end this farce. I had heard enough. I had recorded enough. And I was done being the family ATM they clearly saw me as. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. The sudden movement silenced the room, all eyes turning to me with expressions ranging from surprise to wariness. For several moments, I said nothing, letting the tension build as I looked at each family member in turn. "I've heard enough," I finally said, my voice calm but firm. The restraint I was showing took every ounce of self-control I possessed. "Let me explain a few things very clearly." I turned to face Bridget directly. "First, I earned every dollar I have legitimately. Our startup created innovative security software that protected businesses from types of cyber attacks that existing solutions couldn't handle. Dad never worked in cybersecurity development. He was in sales. He never created any intellectual property related to what my company developed. That claim is a complete fabrication, and you know it." Bridget opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." I addressed the entire table. "Second, despite what you seem to believe, I have helped this family financially for years, despite never receiving so much as a thank you." I looked at Mom. "Who paid for your car repairs last year when the transmission went out? $8,000 that I never expected to be repaid." Her eyes widened slightly in surprise that I would bring this up. "And Bridget," I continued, "who paid off your Visa card after you maxed it out buying clothes for your job interviews? $12,000 that disappeared, just like the job opportunities you claim to be pursuing. Bridget had the decency to look momentarily ashamed before her expression hardened again. I've quietly helped both of you numerous times over the years. The difference is, I didn't enable irresponsible behavior. I didn't fund gambling habits or shopping addictions. I looked pointedly at Mom, whose face paled at the reference to her secret casino visits. What I find most disturbing isn't even your expectation that I should give you money. It's the calculated way you went about this. Bridget, you invaded my privacy by going through my phone without permission. That's not just morally wrong, it's potentially illegal. Bridget's face flushed with anger. You're trying to change the subject. This isn't about me looking at your phone. This is about you hiding millions from your family. It's absolutely about invasion of privacy, manipulation, and attempted extortion, I countered. Which brings me to my next point. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I've been recording this entire conversation. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Derek's face drained of color. Mom gasped. Bridget lunged toward me. You can't record people without their consent, she shrieked, reaching for my phone. I stepped back, keeping it out of her reach. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording, and I definitely consent. Would you like to hear some highlights? Without waiting for a response, I played back a clip where Derek clearly stated his expectations for at least $1 million each, and Bridget's threat to tell everyone I stole from Dad if I didn't comply. The family's panicked reactions were telling. Derek immediately began backpedaling. That was taken out of context. We were just discussing theoretical family support, not making demands. Really? Because it sounded exactly like demands to me, coupled with threats if I didn't comply, I replied. Mom's tears, which had dried up during the money calculations, suddenly returned in full force. How could you record your own mother without telling her? After everything I've done for you. The same way my sister could go through my phone and bank accounts without permission, I suppose, I responded. Family seems to have an interesting definition of privacy in this house. Bridget made another grab for my phone. Delete that right now, she demanded. You have no right. I have every right to protect myself from false accusations and financial exploitation, I said firmly, moving the phone out of her reach again. And that's exactly what this was, from start to finish. A planned ambush to try to pressure me into handing over money I earned through years of hard work and sacrifice. I stood tall, feeling a strange sense of calm clarity despite the chaos around me. This ends now, I stated firmly. I will not be giving any of you money under threats, manipulation, or false claims of family obligation. What happened here tonight has shown me exactly where I stand with all of you, and it has nothing to do with being family. Their desperate attempts to reframe their intentions were almost comical. Derek suddenly became conciliatory. Look, things got heated. We're just concerned about making sure everyone in the family is taken care of. That's all this was about. Mom tried a different approach. You're misunderstanding, sweetheart. We're proud of your success. We just want to be part of your life, including the financial blessings. Bridget, never one for subtlety, went straight to guilt. After everything this family has been through, how can you be so selfish? We're struggling while you're sitting on millions. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. I'm leaving now. I suggest you all take some time to reflect on what family really means, because it isn't this. Derek tried to physically block my path to the door. You can't just walk out. We haven't resolved anything. Move, I said quietly, my voice carrying a warning that made him reconsider. He stepped aside reluctantly. As I headed for the front door, I heard quick footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting another confrontation, but it was Zach. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I had no idea this was what the dinner was really about. I thought it was actually about reconnecting. I nodded, appreciating his sincerity. "Not your fault, Zach. Take care of yourself." As I reached for the doorknob, Bridget appeared in the hallway, her face contorted with anger and something else. "Jealousy, perhaps. You always thought you were better than us," she spat. "Even as kids, you looked down on me because you were smarter, more responsible. Now you have this money, and you think it proves you're superior." I turned to face her one last time. "That's not true, Bridget. I never thought I was better than you. I just made different choices. And tonight wasn't about money. It was about respect, honesty, and what family should really mean." I walked out into the cool evening air, got into my car, and drove away from the house where I grew up. Despite the emotional turmoil churning inside me, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The masks had finally come off. I no longer had to pretend that my family relationships were something they weren't. As I drove home to tell Jamie what had happened, I realized that sometimes the most painful clarity is also the most liberating. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside Jamie, replaying the dinner disaster in my mind. The raw betrayal cut deep, leaving me questioning everything about my family relationships. Had they always seen me primarily as a potential source of financial support? Were there ever genuine feelings of love and connection, or had it all been conditional? "Maybe I should have just given them some money," I whispered to Jamie around 3 a.m. "Would it have been so terrible to help them?" She propped herself up on one elbow, her expression serious in the dim light. "Maxwell, helping family is one thing. Being manipulated and threatened is another. There's a world of difference between asking for help and what they did." The next morning I called my attorney, Robert Klein. I'd worked with him during the company acquisition, and he'd become something of a mentor. I explained the situation and played parts of the recording for him. "Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon when someone comes into money," Robert said with a sigh. "Your sister accessing your financial information without permission is problematic. The threats to spread false information about the source of your wealth could potentially be defamatory." On his advice, I took steps to protect myself. We changed all my banking passwords and security questions. I froze my credit to prevent anyone from trying to open accounts in my name. I even switched banks entirely, moving my assets to institutions my family wouldn't know about. Within days, I discovered that Bridget had indeed been spreading her version of events to extended family members. My phone began lighting up with messages from relatives I barely spoke to, some expressing concern, others making thinly veiled inquiries about helping family. The most hurtful came from my favorite aunt, my mother's sister, who had always been kind to me growing up. "I never thought you'd turn your back on family, Maxwell," her message read. "Your mother is heartbroken." What Bridget hadn't counted on was my cousin Zach. After witnessing the dinner fiasco, he began countering the narrative when he heard family members discussing it. "That's not how it happened," he would say. "They ambushed him with demands and threats." Bridget's campaign extended to social media, where she posted vague but pointed comments about family betrayal and hidden wealth. She never mentioned me by name, staying just shy of anything explicitly defamatory, but the implications were clear to anyone who knew us. The initial, emotional devastation was profound. I found myself questioning my worth beyond my bank account. If my own mother and sister could turn on me like this, was I somehow fundamentally unlovable? The self-doubt crept in during quiet moments, undermining the confidence I'd built over years of professional success. Jamie witnessed the toll it was taking and encouraged me to talk to someone professional. This is family trauma, Maxwell. It's not something you should navigate alone. She was right. I found a therapist specializing in family dynamics and began weekly sessions. Dr. Harmon helped me see the patterns that had been established long before money entered the equation. What you're describing is a long-standing dynamic where you were assigned the role of provider and problem solver, she explained during one session. Your financial success just amplified an existing pattern of exploitation. Meanwhile, my legal team sent cease and desist letters to both my mother and sister, formally warning them against spreading false claims about the source of my wealth or making defamatory statements about me. Mom's response was predictable. She began calling mutual friends and distant relatives, casting herself as the victim of a heartless son who sixed lawyers on his own mother. After everything I did for him, she reportedly sobbed to my second cousin. He's threatening to sue me just for telling the truth. Through therapy, I began to recognize how these manipulative tactics had shaped our relationship throughout my life. Dr. Harmon helped me establish stronger boundaries and process the grief of losing the family I thought I had. One unexpected development came when my father reached out after hearing rumors about the situation. Though we weren't close, he was concerned about claims that I had somehow stolen his intellectual property. I never developed any cybersecurity concepts, he confirmed during our call. That's completely fabricated. I'm sorry they're doing this to you, son. His validation, while not necessary from a factual standpoint, provided emotional relief I hadn't realized I needed. Cousin Zach became an unexpected ally during this period. He called regularly to check in and occasionally shared what he heard from other family members. They're still plotting, he told me during one call. Bridget thinks if they keep pressure on long enough, you'll eventually give in just to make it stop. She had misjudged me severely. The pressure didn't weaken my resolve. It strengthened it. Each manipulative tactic only confirmed I'd made the right decision in walking away. My financial advisor helped me establish a more secure structure for my assets, including creating a trust for educational expenses. Despite everything, I couldn't completely abandon the idea of helping future generations of the family. The trust was structured so that it could only be used for legitimate educational expenses for nieces and nephews, completely bypassing my sister or mother's control. Therapy sessions gradually shifted from processing acute betrayal to developing a healthier understanding of family. Family isn't just about blood, Dr. Harmon reminded me. It's about consistent love, respect, and support. Sometimes our chosen family provides what our blood relatives cannot. This resonated deeply. Looking at the people who had stood by me through this ordeal, I realized I had built a chosen family over the years. Jamie, who never once questioned my decision to protect myself. My former business partners, who reached out with support when they heard what happened. Friends who knew my character and dismissed the rumors without question. 6 months after the disastrous dinner, I received a text from Bridget. It was the first direct communication since that night. "We need to talk," it read simply. After consulting with Dr. Harmon, I agreed to meet her in a public coffee shop, with Jamie nearby at another table. Bridget arrived looking less polished than I remembered, the designer outfit replaced by more modest attire. "The cease and desist letters were unnecessary," she began, defensive immediately. "I never said anything that wasn't true." "We both know that's not accurate," I replied calmly. But I didn't agree to meet to argue about the past. "What do you want, Bridget?" Her expression changed, vulnerability briefly replacing defensiveness. Things have been hard since that night. Derek lost his job. Mom's facing foreclosure for real this time. I waited, saying nothing. Look, I know things got out of hand at dinner, she continued, clearly struggling with the admission. Maybe we approached it wrong. But the fact remains that you have resources that could help your family, and you're choosing not to. I'm choosing not to respond to manipulation and threats, I corrected her. There's a difference. The conversation went in circles, Bridget alternating between almost apologies and renewed attempts at guilt. Finally, I'd had enough. Bridget, I need to be clear. I will never give money to someone who tries to manipulate, threaten, or exploit me, family or not. What happened that night broke something fundamental in our relationship, and rebuilding trust, if it's even possible, would take time and genuine change. She looked at me with genuine confusion. But we're family. Isn't that enough? In that moment, I realized just how different our perspectives were. For Bridget, the fact of being family was supposed to override all other considerations. For me, it was the beginning of a relationship, not a blank check that excused all behavior. No, I said quietly. Being family isn't enough. It's just a starting point. What you build on that foundation is what matters. As I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The weight of obligation that had been placed on me since childhood was lifting. I was learning that I could care about my family without being responsible for them, and that setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary for my own well-being. In the months that followed, I focused on building a life defined by authentic connections rather than obligatory ones. I volunteered as a mentor for young entrepreneurs, sharing knowledge rather than money. I deepened relationships with friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. The journey from betrayal to self-assurance wasn't linear. There were still moments of doubt, still days when I questioned my decisions. But increasingly, those moments were outnumbered by days of clarity and peace. I was no longer the family ATM or problem solver. I was just Maxwell, defining my own worth on my own terms. 6 months after that explosive dinner, my life looks dramatically different. I've moved into a new home in a secure building with good privacy measures. Nothing extravagant but comfortable and, most importantly, safe from unexpected family visits. Jamie moved in with me, our relationship strengthened by weathering the family storm together. I never doubted you were doing the right thing, she told me as we unpacked boxes in our new living room. Standing up for yourself against that kind of manipulation takes real courage. My contact with family now operates under clear conditions. I've explicitly stated that I will not discuss financial matters with them, and any conversation that veers in that direction ends immediately. It's a boundary that has significantly limited our interactions, but the ones we do have are at least honest in their intent. After considerable reflection and discussion with my financial advisor, I established a trust fund dedicated solely to the education of future nieces and nephews. Bridget cannot access this money directly, which was a non-negotiable condition. Any children she has will have their educational expenses covered from preschool through college, but the money goes directly to the institutions, never through her hands. When I informed Bridget of this decision, her reaction was telling. She first tried to argue that she should be the trustee, then suggested the funds could be more flexible in their use. When I remained firm, she reluctantly accepted the arrangement, though her disappointment at not controlling the money was palpable. Mother eventually reached out with a carefully crafted apology that stopped just short of taking real responsibility. I may have gotten carried away that night, she conceded during a phone call 3 months after the incident. but you have to understand how it felt to learn my son had millions while I was struggling. I let the statement hang in the air for a moment before responding. Mom, I understand feeling hurt or left out. What I don't understand is the ambush, the threats, and the false accusations. That goes beyond feeling hurt. She sighed heavily. Can't we just put this behind us? Family should forgive each other. Forgiveness is possible, I replied. But rebuilding trust takes time and consistent behavior. And it doesn't mean there won't be boundaries going forward. We've settled into an uneasy peace. I forgive without forgetting, maintaining clear boundaries about what I will and won't discuss or tolerate. It's not the warm, unconditional relationship portrayed in greeting cards, but it's honest in a way our previous interactions never were. Cousin Zach has become a more regular presence in my life. At 25, he was still figuring out his path when the family drama erupted. Seeing how quickly money could corrupt relationships gave him a valuable perspective. That dinner was like watching a mask slip off, he told me during one of our regular coffee meetings. I always thought family was supposed to be the people who had your back no matter what. The right family members do, I replied. But that right isn't automatically earned by blood. Zach had been drifting between odd jobs, unsure of his direction. When he expressed interest in technology, I offered guidance rather than handouts. I reviewed his community college course selections, connected him with industry contacts for informational interviews, and provided honest feedback on his resume. What I didn't do was pay his way or guarantee him a position. I want to earn it, he said when I asked if he needed financial help with his courses. After what I saw with Bridget and Aunt Linda, I never want money to be the basis of our relationship. His integrity in that moment told me everything about his character. I've continued mentoring him, watching with pride as he's built his own path in the tech industry, currently working as a junior developer at a promising startup. Bridget has maintained her resentment, though she's careful now about what she says publicly. During our last interaction, a tense coffee meeting arranged to discuss the educational trust, she finally admitted something I'd long suspected. Fine, I knew you earned the money legitimately, she confessed when pressed about her accusations. But you have to understand, it just seemed so unfair that you had so much while we were struggling. Someone who has that much money should share it with family. That should be my choice, though, I replied. Not something forced through manipulation and threats. She had no response to that. Dad has become an unexpected source of closure. Though we'll never have the close relationship I once hoped for, he reached out after hearing about the family conflict and explicitly acknowledged my legitimate success. I'm proud of what you built, he said during a rare phone call. And I want you to know I've told everyone who asked that you earned every penny through your own innovation and hard work. His validation wasn't necessary from a factual standpoint, but emotionally, it helped heal a wound I didn't realize was still open. My life now is built around relationships that are balanced and authentic. I've found freedom in no longer seeking approval from family members who see me primarily as a resource. Instead, I focus on connections with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. I've also channeled my experience into helping others. I established a small philanthropic program that provides seed funding and mentorship to young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Helping others build their own financial independence feels more meaningful than simply writing checks to family members who would likely squander the funds. The journey from that disastrous dinner to where I am now has given me a deeper understanding of wealth's complexities in relationships. Money doesn't just reveal character. It amplifies what was already there. Those with entitlement tendencies become more entitled. Those with generosity become more generous. Most importantly, I've learned that protecting yourself financially isn't selfish. It's necessary. Setting boundaries around money doesn't mean you don't care. It often means you care enough to prevent enabling destructive behaviors. Today, I no longer feel guilt about my success or anxiety about family expectations. I've found a peaceful middle ground where I can be generous on my own terms while maintaining the boundaries necessary for my well-being. The final wisdom I've gained from this experience is that true wealth isn't measured by bank balances, but by the quality of your relationships. I may have lost the idealized version of family I once hoped for, but I've gained something more valuable: the freedom to build authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. So what would you do if your family betrayed you for money? Would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself, even from family. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the one you're born into.